Yes. Okay.
Let's start over there.
Hello. Now that you know how to edit, you're like, okay, I can cut this.
Yeah, no, this will be a bloopish for later. Zen. Hello. That was weird.
We're weird. Welcome to Manny VS Mommy. We're recording again, which is weird because now we know we've done it and we've posted it and people have watched, and now it's like, okay,
That's not
that's
bad.
how we do it. Yeah,
We can do it. It's easy.
here we are.
Wonderful. So we thought we'd start off with kind of a little get to know you activity. So what we're going to do, and I totally took this from another podcast called Not Too Deep with Grace Helbig. And it's 3 short phrases or short sentences or even just 3 words to describe some situation in your life. So have you thought of a situation you want to talk about?
Yes.
Okay, what is it?
It's a question.
Okay.
Okay, so your top 3 places to be.
What do you mean by to be? Define everything for me.
I did that initially. That's so funny you mentioned that because this is new for us, right? We've played it when we went on our road trip. We played it back and forth for a little bit and kind of got used to the idea. So now that we're ready to do it, I had situational, I had context, I had all of the details on what that meant. And I was like, no, that defeats the purpose. There is no explanation. It's up for your interpretation. So, and that's why I phrased it that way. It took me a while to like, okay, what's open for interpretation? Top 3 places to be.
First would be anywhere Disney, cruise, land, anything Disney related. My favorite place is Disneyland, Disney cruise. So I would say a Disney place, location. Probably cruise over Disneyland because it's a little more fun. My second place to be, my bed. I have the best mattress. Purple, please sponsor us.
Right?
We both have purple mattresses.
We both have one,
Love
actually,
them.
Independently. Like, I don't think we knew for a long time that each of us had one because we moved mine, but you weren't a part of that, and I don't know that we talked about it because I already had it. You already had yours.
Yeah.
We love them.
And my third place to be, Texas. Austin, Texas. I just love the energy of the city and the excitement, and there's always something going on, and you get the southern hospitality with it. It's just a fun place to be.
I love Austin. I've never been, and I love it. Seriously, I don't need to go to know how much I would love it.
It's
Everything
so
I know
fun.
of it and everything people say, Carl's been, I've never been, but I want to go. He says it's great.
Where would your 3 places to be?
See, I didn't even decide. I get to throw it on myself too because I'm like, I don't know. So I just didn't really think about it because that's how I roll. Top 3 places to be, being social. So that's like up for interpretation, right? It's not necessarily a place, but that's super important to me. And every personality test, all of that I've done, that's an important part of who I am. So being social. Second one, I mean anywhere with my family, you know, like there's so many experiences that I can create, and I like just being home with my family because it's chaos here. When it's quiet, it's disconcerting a little bit. Like there's times they're all gone and I'm like uncomfortable because it's so quiet.
And I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. It's so quiet.
Right. Yeah, it throws me off because that's not my normal. And third place is my favorite to be. I like roller coasters.
Really?
Like riding a roller coaster. Yeah.
We've kind of talked about that, but not much.
Yeah. I was just researching the other day vacation options based on the best roller coasters. So if anybody has any recommendations on like you have to go on this one, it's in this place, you have to go. We're kind of working on destinations that we can go and ride roller coasters.
Do you know where has a lot of roller coasters?
Where?
Disneyland.
Disneyland, right?
Anaheim, California.
Yeah, but see, I'm more like the thrill ride. I feel like Disneyland. I mean, I've been there, and the thrill rides are like, and there's like one, you know. It's more experiential, I think, which is why I think you love Disneyland. Anyway, that was 3, right?
Yep, 3 places to be. That's crazy. I like that. Everything we do is completely opposite. Like you said, we've taken different personality tests. We took the core strengths test, which is kind of behaviors and what drives our behaviors, our decisions, and our reactions. The Gallup
Strengths test.
Gallup strengths test.
We've talked about our Hartman color code. Like there's so many we could give a shout out to because we're super into that part of learning about ourselves. Like, I think that's why a lot of why we connect. I mean, we just had a lengthy conversation this morning about things that are going on and specifically things with me that we could work on. And it's so great to have that language to communicate in, you know, with each other, to connect and, okay, we're speaking the same language because I know what that particular strength means or how I interact with it, which is big.
Well, I think for a long time we didn't really know how to communicate because we are, every test we've ever taken, you are one side of the spectrum, I am the complete opposite.
And opposite in a compensatory way.
Yeah.
Like, it's not opposites in like this way, it's opposites in here's my strengths and here's your strengths, and they complement each other, which I love. I love that it's like, I don't know, we figure out how to work together.
I think that's helped being like, okay, so Janet's motivation is this, where that is my least motivation. Competition.
Doesn't matter to me at all. In fact, it makes me quite uncomfortable.
Janet's competitive. That's her biggest driving
number one.
core strength.
I was the only one in that journey.
And for me, competitiveness is like second to last.
Yeah.
I don't like competitiveness. That's not me. And so knowing that her biggest strength is my biggest trigger kind of helps us be like, oh,
there it
that
is.
makes sense.
There it is. I
now it
recognize
clicks.
it. Yeah.
Okay, so we've been for months making a list of different topics we want to talk about in the podcast, and just like, oh, this would be a fun thing to go over. So I thought what we should do, since our first podcast was pretty long, is that we should break this up into little segments. And so we'll set a timer for 15 minutes, and we'll each pick and take turns on one just random subject from our list that we've been curating for 3 months now.
Yeah.
So do you want to go first and pick the first one, or do you want me to?
I just picked the 3, right? So it's your turn.
Okay, can I see the list?
Yes. And I also need to set the timer while we're at it. There you go. I'll help you do it.
Okay, so so actually I'm gonna do what I like to always do, set the rules, and then just completely disregard them and do whatever.
Okay.
I thought,
Shocker.
as we were driving today, do you want to set the timer?
Yeah.
That we should talk about why it's Manny versus Mommy. And just a brief history of how we came up with it and why it's titled that. Are we ready to go?
Yeah, so I've set the timer. We talked about how we need to set the timer in order to maintain some structure and make sure that we can do little snippets here and there. So tell me again what the topic is.
Why Manny versus Mommy? How we came up with the name, what it even means. So we came up with the name while we were driving. We came up with the name while we were driving. We're like, oh, we should do a podcast, going back and forth. And I'm pretty sure it was me that came up with it. Unless it's a bad title, then it was you that came up with it.
No, I think it was you, and we had lengthy discussion about it.
And I was like, I think that'd just be kind of fun because I'm not competitive. So for me, it's kind of like the complete opposite of my personality. And for you, you are competitive. To be like competition between the two, even though we're really not competitive towards each other. But because we come from such varying backgrounds, everything is so different on how we think things through. It really is like it's me versus Janet. Not in a bad way, but how am I going to approach this so that Janet understands where I'm coming from? How am I going to make sure that she's ready for this change that I want to implement? Because for me, like, oh, this is just the natural next progression, next step.
And I feel like you and I have such differing views because, like you said, we come from completely different backgrounds. So it's been important to express where we're coming from, which I think we just did this morning. You know, it's funny that the topics work out the way they do, you know, because, like you said, it's prevalent right now. Just talking about how our strengths work out and how our backgrounds influence the decisions that we make. You know, I feel like that's what we've really struggled with is I grew up in a completely different environment than you did. And so it's hard for me to understand a little bit about where you're coming from. And so it's been important to share those things as they come up.
Can you think of any specific examples that you want to talk about?
Specific examples of how we've had to communicate about
how
where we're
it
coming
was
from?
Janet versus Kent.
With the kids specifically, or just in general?
Just in general, we can do kids, we can do just in general.
Well, when it comes to like, I mean, where we don't necessarily see eye to eye, is that what you're asking?
Mm-hmm.
I think the most heated discussion we've had was a relatively political one. And you always play devil's advocate. You told people that before, like, it doesn't matter if I believe the same thing, I'm still going to argue, just to argue, which I think is so funny because that seems like a characteristic that I would have, and I love doing it. But then you and I are like, and then we walk away, and both of us are like, you know what? We're past the point of caring about that. It's going to be fine,
and it's over.
Yeah.
The best part though is we weren't really paying attention to our surroundings. We were just talking, and
G came up.
Yeah, youngest 4-year-old comes up and is like, Mom. Because we can't.
Yeah, snuggling on both of us. And finally, Kent's the one who's like relationship based and all that. I'm like focused on the results. Let's resolve this. This is going to work out. When I go into conflict mode, we've learned, I step back and I analyze the situation. And I'm like, okay, how do we find a solution? What's efficient? And you go to, in conflict, relationships. Let's just make everything okay. So you're the one that noticed that she was like distressed. You're finally like, I think she's having a little bit of a hard time with how heated this discussion is. Like, maybe we should tone down. I was like, fine, I'm done anyway.
Let's just disagree and goodbye.
Yes. Well, and not necessarily disagree, just like we don't have to see eye to eye. It's not that we disagree, we just don't see it the same way, which I think is different.
And I think with the core strengths test that we just did this last weekend, one of my things is that I seek out for individuals to be heard. So if you're going to say, oh, I'm having this issue with this coworker, I'll immediately jump into what I think that coworker's headspace is so that they can have a chance to have a conversation with you, in a sense. Does that make sense? So if you're having a difficulty with X, then I'm going to think, okay, X is like this is how they would probably respond, almost so that you can have that get it out of your system conversation, think of maybe from their point of view, whether I agree with X or not.
Right.
It's just, I want to make sure that this person who's
principle,
not
that
here.
That person has a voice.
Yeah, that person who's not here who can defend themselves or who can talk for themselves, so I'll do it for them.
Which is so funny because that comes from like the conflict motivation that you experience, because yours is relationship based and individualization is one of your strengths. And so those things combined, I feel like you want to give that person a voice, where I'm like, well, I've already talked to them about it. Okay, I've already confronted them, and this is what they said about it.
I just want to vent, and I just want you to be quiet, and
right,
maybe agree with me, just shake your head.
I already know I'm right, so just stop right there, okay? Because this is what happened, this is how it is. And you're like, well, what about this? And I'm like, okay, take a step back. Let's analyze the situation. And I think in those ways, like learning how we complement each other and how to communicate in ways, like I remember you asking me, what will be supportive for you to make this happen? And I know my strengths and how I can support myself and how you can support me because we've been through this experience.
Can I make a confession?
Confession time.
As I'm typing up, how can I support you? I'm thinking, are you kidding? This is another thing to add to my list. I don't have time.
So accurate, but you love me and you're willing to do it.
But it's important, so it gets done.
Right. And that's one of the things that came up. It's come up a lot with the kids, which the topic that I was thinking of was based more on that, what the kids need and what their motivations are and all that kind of stuff. But it's hard. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy, and it is important because I feel like if you take care of the important things, everything else falls into place, you know? And not only that, if you take care of the little things too, the big things don't seem like such a big deal. So it can go either way. I think it depends on the issue.
But I think part of my codependency is I need to be busy. Like I had about a half an hour before you got here where I was just doing nothing. And G was out playing and didn't want any interaction from me. And I'm just like, what do I do? What do I do? There's stuff I know I can do, but what do I actually do? So I think I just struggle with needing to remain busy.
Right. Why do you think that is? Because I'm not any different. I mean, you and I, there's a lot of similarities that I think we have, and that's one of them. Like the codependency stuff that comes up. Because I do feel like I have to be doing all the time. Some of it is like, that's where I've gotten my value for a very long time. I was a human doing, not a human being. So it's different, you know, like I'm of value. I do these things because I am of value, but it's not the same as like needing to derive it from that. But I do better under chaos, which we've talked about. So I put things off to the last second.
And I don't, because I'm complete opposite. I need
but
structure
you do the same
and
behavior.
planning. It's the same behavior, but different
we're coming from different places,
Different
which I think is something that I really picked up from that training this last weekend. Actually researched technically, but it was a training that is offered. But from that, I feel like I learned that you and I can do the same behavior, and it's for completely different reasons.
Different perspectives.
Yes, and it's the intention that really matters. Because you can do the same behavior as me, and it might come across differently than if I do it, because my intention is completely different behind it.
So I need structure because I've, through periods of my life, have had chaos, and I absolutely hate it. I can't function under chaos. So I have to have the structure, the schedule, the go. And so when that's...
So then why are you here? Like, that's the funny juxtaposition. The codependence outweighs the chaos. Like, I'm willing to tolerate this. But I think for some of it, like, there's some truth to be had about confronting yourself with situations that help you grow past the things that you struggle with, right? I mean, that's why most people pick a partner who triggers things in them that are old wounds, right? The way that we were raised. And I think that's kind of what you're maybe experiencing. I'm not going to speak for you, but I feel like I end up in situations where I go through things that challenge that because it's what I'm used to, even though I hate it.
Was that the timer?
Maybe. No, actually,
oh, good. Okay.
We got 6 minutes.
Oh, good. So let's dive deeper into this. I agree with you. I think that a lot of it comes from not... Okay, so my...
Wait, hold on to that because
yes.
We're going to edit this part out because I don't know how to... Let me see. I need to make sure it just vibrates. How do I do that? Radar default. So this is my timer. When it goes off, I don't want it to ding.
It's on silent, right?
It is. But no, it doesn't. Even when my sound is off.
Ding?
Yes.
I don't know. We'll just have a ding go through. And I'm not editing this out because I don't have time for that.
It's the naked bongos.
Oh, nice. Okay, so I think for me, personally, I don't like the unknown. And so I have to strive to make sure it's a control thing. Honestly, it comes down to control. I don't want to feel out of control. I don't like that feeling. That's why I always have to drive the car. I want to be the one that's in control. It would be nice to just hang out in the back seat, but I would be so stressed the entire time I can't do it.
Which is so interesting. Like, that's a super other end of the spectrum control thing, which is so hard because my control looks different, right? Like, I can get to that point, but there's other things that I cannot let go of. I can't release that control. And for you, that shows up in different ways because we come from different motivations, I think.
Different backgrounds, different everything. So do you remember my biggest weakness from the core strengths?
Competitive was down there.
It was down there.
It was not a weakness. It's a strength overdone.
A strength
right?
overdone. Yes.
That was the wording which I liked. So the strength overdone for you.
So when I go into crisis or when things are not going the way that it should be, then I will rely on a different behavior, different strength, and I'll overdo it. I'll try and overcompensate. And that's just a thing that we all do. We all, when we're in crisis or when we're in a difficult situation, we'll draw on anything we can to make sure that we make it through it. My list was self-confidence.
That's right.
I was like, oh, okay, makes sense, but oh.
So when you use that in crisis, it doesn't show up very well.
No.
It doesn't work. And are you talking about the flip side where it was the biggest trigger for you?
Mm-hmm.
So when you see that in other people, it's really hard for you. It shows up as conflict.
Yeah, because it's not my strength. It's not what I'm comfortable with. It's not my go-to, just in everyday life. That now I'm like, okay, this person's overly confident. What are they hiding? What's going on? Like that person in the research study training that we did, who was overly confident. I'm like, they're a serial killer, psychopath. They're gonna murder us. Watch that person because they're gonna get us.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And see, for me, like some of those, things that trigger me and initiate conflict is when people are like indecisive, super submissive, self-sabotaging, that kind of stuff. I'm like, what's the matter? And I feel like that's kind of the same thing where I'm like thinking there's something wrong when it's just how they're expressing their strengths. It doesn't mean they're not psychopaths.
And so yours is indecisive, one of your biggest triggers. one of my biggest strengths is being indecisive.
So
For a strength,
interesting.
it's because I'm very analytical. I want to know every
Action
input.
oriented.
I want to know. I want to make the right decision the first time, so I don't have to go and repeat or go and fix.
But that comes from a different place because my motivation that was linked to that was different. Remember, it was something about not necessarily having it be a weakness, but the way it's used. And because I don't use it that way, I use it a different way. It seems like a weakness to me, which is so interesting. Like, it's opening my eyes, I feel like, to why we are the way that we are and how we all complement each other and how to use that in a healthy way. And I think that's where you and I are so well connected, is that we complement each other and we both work really hard to know more about ourselves and about the other person, which I think has been a recent change for us to really put energy into that with this particular project. We're going to be working together in a different way, so I feel like both of us have been really focusing on that part of it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's changed my view of the world. That was kind of my point, is that it's changed the way I'm viewing other people and their strengths and behaviors and how they show up.
Yeah. Well, for a long time, I've always really tried to be like, okay, this person really offended me, hurt me, this person did cause this reaction in me. What's the intent? I've always really tried to be intent minded. So I know that your intent was not to upset me, but it still hurt, it still upset me. But because you weren't intending to hurt me, I can work past it and I can communicate and I can keep going. Whereas before, years ago, I was kind of a wreck as a kid. Very, very emotional. Very, very emotional. I mean, a little thing would just ruin my entire day, and everything was just horrible until it clicked. Well, they weren't intending that. So I think that this thing that we went through on Saturday really was like a step further of, well, have you considered what glasses they're viewing this through, or what perspective they're having with this?
What their experience is. Which, yeah, that's kind of my perception too, is like, it's different for different people. How can I appreciate where they're coming from? And I feel like you had a head start on that for just the reason you said. It's about the intention. Because do you want to talk briefly about when we went on our trip to see our favorite podcast,
Yes.
My Favorite Murder? Shout out, Karen in Georgia.
Oh, I loved it.
Because that's a part of what we connected about, which you alluded to last time, was, sharing that you listened to a crime podcast, right? And how do we? Oh, there's the timer.
No, we don't get to. Topic over. If you want to know more about it, if you want to know what happened on our drive down to Vegas,
it's on the next one. Yeah.
Well, the next one.
We're just gonna leave it at that.
We'll just randomly, we can come back to it if they want to know.
Yeah, if somebody reminds us, because we'll probably forget. I'm not making a note. If you guys want to hear about it, you better let us know, because I won't remember. Okay, so my topic that I had come up with discussing. Wait, should we start? Are we starting each one with the three things?
I think we should.
Each segment? Okay. So each segment we're starting with the three things. I started with the three things, so now it's your turn.
Okay, so now I have to be like competitive in my knowing what we should do. Let's see.
No, just pick one.
Tell me your most embarrassing moment. In three words, short phrases.
Here's the thing. I don't embarrass very easily. Oh, I got it. It's from when I was a kid. Okay. That's all I'm going to say about it.
No follow-up questions?
No follow-up questions. It's 3 words or phrases, right? Which we didn't follow last time. See? 3 favorite places to be. And we were like, blah, 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 blah.
Because of this. Okay, so this time we'll follow the rules.
Yes.
But remember, when it's me, I don't like to follow the rules. I'll set the rules and I'll just go off on my own.
Which is so funny, because you are more process-oriented than I am. Anywho, and I'm like, this is how it's supposed to be. What is that? Anyway, 3 what? I already forgot. 3
short phrases or words for your most embarrassing moment.
Most embarrassing moment. See, that's the part I can remember the topic. Like I said, it's really hard for me to get embarrassed, so I have to pull one from 3rd grade elementary school hall. First day.
That's it.
What?
3rd grade.
3rd grade elementary school hall.
First day.
No, 3rd grade elementary school hall. Phrase.
That's a full sentence.
Oh, now we're doing it. Now we are.
Because I already have mine all planned out. I'm ready to go.
Time out then. 3rd grade elementary school hall. First day. Vomit everywhere.
Airport terminal. Diarrhea. No change of clothes. What is our topic we're going to talk about?
How do I segue into that? If that's a competition, you win. I'm okay with losing.
There was no winners.
Okay. The topic I would like to talk about today that I came up with from the list was very apropos, if I'm using that word correctly, because we're dealing with this right now. That's what that means, right?
No idea.
Fair parenting versus parenting the individual child. I'm setting the timer. Hang on. Ready? Okay. So if it buzzes, don't worry about it because the sound starts.
I'm gonna go.
Yes.
I don't think that you can fair parent. And I've explained it to your kids. If you want it to be fair, we have to go to the lowest developmental child, which would be a 4-year-old. And we have to go from there.
No,
she's
turning
4.
5 in June.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the 7-year-old.
The 4-year-old.
Good timing. This is, this will happen. Yes.
So going to the 4-year-old's level of development and parenting from there, which means you can't walk outside without me following you and knowing where you're going. That would be fair parenting, right?
Yeah.
How else would you do fair?
If it's going to be equal across the board, it's not fair for them to be able to go off on their own because they're older, but she can't. I mean, if you're going to do fair, fair is fair.
Mm-hmm.
That's not individualized at all, right? This is what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Like, this is how it is across the board versus you're at this age or this development or this personality type or whatever.
You've had these life experiences that are making these decisions.
Right. Yeah. You're an individual with a personality. So talk about how that's coming into play right now.
Not great. Not very well.
Hey.
Well, I think a little background is twins 1 and 2, your oldest children. Last summer was a rough summer, and I can't have another summer like that. It was devastating, and scrambling, trying to figure out, okay, how do we do what's best for them, enforce boundaries, but also include them, hear their side of it when they don't want to communicate, and they're teenagers.
Yeah, like
16, have a car, have a job, wanting to be independent.
We have a broad spectrum. I mean, we've got 17 now down to almost 5, and everything in between. And twins, and there's so many things going on with the dynamics of blended family and all this kind of stuff.
I think, even just the twin relationship, that plays into it where you don't have to worry about that with your other kids besides your other side of twins, where that's not an issue.
Right.
Which
the
child 5, I
dynamics
don't have to
between
worry
the two
about
of them.
twins.
Right, because the dynamics between the two of them definitely play into it. Yeah, not 5, 6. We did that last time too, I think.
Yeah,
Same one. Do you think he's older maybe than he is? He's not.
He's wise beyond his years.
Maybe that's part of it. But yeah, with that dynamic, it's totally different. And those of you with twins understand, depending on how old they are, the dynamic changes. But from the time, before they're born, they have a dynamic together. So it is a different situation than, say, a single child. But then you got the middle child versus the oldest child, because those are completely different dynamics versus the baby of the family. There's so many different things that can play into it. Hey, we're recording, so I didn't expect you home right now. Proceed downstairs.
Quietly. Janet, I'm irritated. Why am I irritated?
Things didn't work out the way you wanted.
I had a plan, a schedule.
And it got disrupted.